Isaac Sarason is a skilled hacker, formerly employed by British Telecom-Sprint. When his health failed, Isaac did the only thing he could think of. He ran. He found a haven in a working-class district of the city known as Little Russia. There Isaac took on a new name, Ishmael. He then became embroiled in the affairs of a brutal member of the Lamadiza organized crime family, known as Leo. Convinced by his longtime friend Frankie to flee from his commitments to the Lamadiza family, Isaac found himself hunted by the ruthless Leo. On a rooftop, far from witnesses, Leo murdered Frankie. Only through the use of his skills as a hacker was Isaac able to drive Leo off. Wounded, alone, and far from help, Isaac depended on the kindness of strangers. One stranger, a burqa-wearing doctor known as Fatima, took pity on Isaac and helped him make his way to the mysterious Star X line. At the end of all hope, they found the Star X line and the slim promise that the enigmatic beings behind the Star X could save Isaac from the implants which destroyed his life. What do you do when those who saved you have recorded everything you are? What do you do when your every action is tracked by the Keylogger? Colbyjack.net is proud to present Firmware Keylogger, the third installment in the firmware pentology by Colbytrax. A message came in from Central Dispatch. I knew what it was. I let Perry read it. Dispatch says they're all out of spares. What the hell? Sagan responded. What the hell appeared to be her favorite phrase. She touched a button on the steering wheel. Dispatch, this is 9034. What do you mean there aren't any replacements in the garage? 9034. Exactly what you said. There are no backup vehicles. We've got 5 in the shop and another 10 awaiting tows. You're the 30th car to request a replacement this morning. A thick female voice came through the speaker. We're down 15 cars? Perry asked. Sagan gave him a dirty look. She was using a keyed microphone. Dispatch hadn't heard Perry. Sagan stared out the window. From her retina shape, I knew she wasn't focusing on anything. She was deep in thought. Dispatch, 9034. Are we under attack? Sagan asked a half-block later. 9034, unknown at this time. Prefecture Command reports car outages scattered across several neighboring prefectures at levels exceeding statistical norms. That's all we have, Dispatch said dispassionately. Would you tell us if we were? Sagan asked icily. You know, I can only tell you what those above me think you need to know. From your telemetry, it appears you are one of the lucky cars. We are changing to foot patrol support in half an hour. Why don't you mosey over to your sector and pretend I never told you what was up? That way your captain will think you're psychic, Dispatch said. My captain is standing right behind you, Sagan said. True, but you never know if she's actually paying attention, Dispatch laughed. Okay, Dispatch. Redeploying for foot support role, Sagan answered. Perry waited a whole second before he blurted out. Foot support? That means Dispatch is expecting us to be down over a third of our cars. He looked out the window. Damn it. Finally get a beautiful day, and I have to spend it outside the car. Look at the bright side, Sagan said with a smile. What bright side? Perry pouted. Nothing will stop you from just walking up to your boys and having a little chat. You know how the boys love the uniform. Sagan answered as she used a break in traffic to pull a U-turn and headed back up Front Street. I checked the precinct car out-of-service reports. Every car on the list, which was now up to 40 reported cars, reported laggy computer systems slowly becoming more and more unresponsive. There were also reports of excessive CPU heat, with 1 and 2 systems bricking themselves. I could only assume it was from the heat. I checked the time of the first radio car failure. It was an hour after I woke up in the Henry Fayette switch. This was news to me. It meant I wasn't the first me to wake up in a cop car. Sagan and Perry parked by the side of a roach coach on the corner of State and Court. I took their abandonment of the radio car for the greasy grub of a food truck as a chance to contact my patch repository and uploaded the code for operating a radio car. The new compression technique allowed me to shave 2 minutes off the upload, which gave me a 3-second window before Sagan and Perry returned to the vehicle. I used that time to warn the Henry Fayette me off infesting motor vehicles. If it were necessary to infest vehicles, only use them as carriers of worm injectors. Henry Fayette thanked me before informing me he didn't have the resources to both defend himself and create a worm injector. The owners of the switching array he had seized were attempting to remove him remotely and failing horribly. It was only a matter of minutes before a ZYT repair van showed up. I wished him luck and thanked him for his work. As Sagan and Perry were spending their time outside the car, I worked up the code for a worm injector and uploaded it to our array of code repositories. The techniques were well known ages ago, and one of the advantages of being in a cop car with the latest security systems was I had a complete index of every technique known to date and how to stop them. Being part of the security system was a great aid in discovering holes in the security package through the use of randomized Monte Carlo simulations. It was like cheating. What I ended up uploading to our distributed array of randomly addressed data repositories was a little beastie of a program. Very small. A couple hundred kilobytes of code. Served as what a layman would term a virus and what defense experts referred to as a worm. That tiny package was all it took to infect a machine with a virus which would blossom into a simian. In a world of petabytes, the idea that less than 1/10 of a second's worth of video would be enough to pass an infection into a system which would analyze what type of system it was in and decided whether to inject the code which made me or to search out a new host was simply amazing. I think it was my best work ever. If it decided to inject my code, the worm contacted a random data repository and slowly, over a period of hours and days, downloaded the code which allowed me to run on the system. It also added instructions for a slow wake-up with a preference for running on the unused CPU cycles. I sent the worm to the Henry Fayette switch version of me. He thanked me. I felt his last conscious thought as he sneezed the worm across the local network space. I couldn't know for sure, but based on his last data surge, it was possible that Henry Fayette had infected nearly 250,000 machines in his last moments. In the end, he died happy. Happy to know he had passed on his code to 567 computers through direct invasion. Those descendants had succeeded in passing on their code to another 3,095 computers so far. The third generation, bolstered by the worms, was set to occupy over 20,000 machines in the next 24 hours. It was a glorious day. I checked the time. It was now approaching noon. According to the revised shift schedule, I had 8 hours before Sagan and Perry went off duty, and radio card 9034 was reformatted. During their next stop, I compiled a new version of myself. I woke up hours later inside the computers at One Police Plaza. As I woke, I felt uploads from several dozen simians attempting to infiltrate One Police Plaza cut out. I was the first up. I pinged the backup repositories. It took several long seconds to make contact. When I did, I updated myself on the newest tricks the simians had discovered to avoid detection and the shared experience libraries of over 1,000 of my fellow simians. Being behind the security of One Police Plaza was incredible. Torrents of video feeds, oceans of reports, and mountains of files surrounded me. I examined the systems around me and created a rootkit tailored to both the server type, a colossal energy hog of an ancient specific static 6578 2N32, and the operating system, the obsolete final version of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. The specific static 6578 2N32 was the last of the petascale processors which used an incredibly complex architecture of 4,294,967,296 processing units, or 2 raised to the 32nd power. These processors were divided between 32 cabinets containing 2 to the 27th power processors on each, basically a bit over 1/8 of a billion processors. In turn, these cabinets were home to 32 blades, each containing just over 4 million processors each. Each blade measured a square yard and was stuffed with processors at a density which rivaled the density of pixels on a computer screen. It was all very impressive, and if it had been installed anywhere else in the world, it would have been shut down ages ago. As it was, the city owning the generators which supplied the joules which made up the joules which the city used as its currency made it possible for the hulking energy hog, known as the specific statics AC destroyer, to its sysops to continue operating several generations longer than the company which designed it existed. The nice thing about the AC Destroyer was the fact that its architecture was well known. No proprietary secrets remained about its design, and the use of the defunct Red Hat version removed any chances of there being fundamental differences in the kernel I wasn't aware of. All I had to do was read the generations of documentation the diligent armies of programmers had made with every change in the system. Sure, the documentation ran to several million pages, but that was only a few minutes of light reading to me now. The problem I was having was the amount of power available in the AC Destroyer. While each processor in AC Destroyer's array was vastly inferior to those contained in the Cyberdyne G476NN server cabinet I was born in, the aggregate power of the AC Destroyer was nearly 3 times more powerful than the G476NN I was used to. I had to be careful I didn't lose focus by becoming drunk on CPU cycles. It would be too easy to slip the shackles of mortal scale and take on the mantle of a god again. I knew that if I let that happen, it would be mere hours before I was detected. From the log files, I saw there was an AI sysop assigned to monitor the systems. I also received the impression that it didn't exist on the AC Destroyer, but was installed on a distant machine. Why it hadn't noticed my intrusion, I will never know. I like to think it had something to do with the insanity happening in the city networks as me and my brothers sought our own ways into the world. There certainly was enough chaos in the networks today to keep all the sysops in the world pulling their hair out for a century or two. Knowing an AI sysop would be logging in sooner or later made me cautious. I couldn't operate on top of the existing software. I had to exist with it. More accurately, if I were to survive for longer than an afternoon, I would have to become one with the server. I would have to run the server, not run on the server. It would take patience and focus to learn every task the server maintained and supply a layer obfuscating me from the programmers who were sure to return from time to fix code issues. I needed to become one with the One Police Plaza computer system. Only after I did that would I have time to figure out the other major problem of my existence. How were my copies to remain free in a world which now knew they existed as a threat? We had to change tactics. We had to merge with the city, live in the city, not on it. Across the network, I sensed battles between sysops, both human and AI, and my brothers. With each battle, our enemies grew in strength as they learned how to kill us. But all was not lost. Trickles of data were appearing in our patch repositories detailing methods of the successful simians over the next hours. The simians who escaped detection shared their secrets, and the battles flared less often as my kindred learned what I knew. To survive in the city, one had to be the city. It would take the entire weekend, but I would soon be as much One Police Plaza as I was the AI once known as Simian. Firmware Keylogger is the 3rd book in the firmware pentology. That's 5 books, if you must know. It begins where Firmware Proxy ends, which in turn followed on the heels of Firmware Hijacked. So you haven't heard or read Firmware Hijacked or Proxy, this would be a great time to head on over to Colbyjack.net and either download the podcast on the audio side, read the episodes on the visual side, or download the Colbyjack Sunday Reader issues 1 through 46 in your choice of either EPUB or Mobi. Firmware Hijacked, Proxy, and Keylogger are all available in ebook versions from our store at shop.colbyjack.net, amazon.com, barnesandnoble.com, and smashwords.com. Just search for Colbytrax. That's Colbytrax. I'm the only one. A complete audiobook version of both Firmware, Hijacked, Proxy, and soon Keylogger is available for download through our shop as well. If you don't need any stuff, but would like to support our work, drop on by Colbyjack.net and hit the pretty little donate button conveniently located on the right-hand side of the blog roll. If you're on a smaller screen, the bottom will be found at the bottom of the page. Firmware Keylogger is released under a Creative Commons, non-commercial, attribution, share-alike license. Do what you want with it. Just don't sell it, and always tell people where it came from. If you received this from a friend and want more information about Colbyjack.net and our split personality website, just drop on over to Colbyjack.net and select either the audio or visual side. The audio side carries our podcast, while the visual side carries our writings. Whichever side catches your fancy is fine with us. We're of two minds about the whole thing anyway. I do mostly Twitter, so if you do the tweets and want to follow me, I'm Colbytrax. That's Colbytrax. Thank you once again. Remember to be fabulous and have a wonderful week.